An already tenuous relationship between Colombia's government and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex deteriorated into open hostilities earlier today after Vice President Francia Marquez delivered a full-throated diatribe on national television blasting the royal couple. The environmental activist turned politician did not mince words, outright banning Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from ever returning to the South American nation while accusing them of being celebrity grifters, exploiting the country's indigenous communities for profit. "We will not allow these mediocre, second-rate so-called humanitarians wielding artificial Western privilege and colonial mindsets to keep extracting and appropriating from our sacred ancestral territories, enriching themselves through indigenous knowledge plundered without permission or consent," proclaimed Marquez during an incendiary speech before the Colombian Congress. After the reprehensible stunt Meghan and Harry tried pulling in the Amazon, depleting villagers' medicinal resources for their soulless corporate overlords back in California, that fraud couple is permanently persona non grata throughout the Republic. The Vice President's inflammatory remarks represent the latest salvo escalating simmering tension between the Sussexes and Colombian authorities since they visited the Amazon rainforest region last November on a high-profile trip, partnering with conservation groups and corporations like Disney Nature and Amazonia Pura. While touted as an educational expedition raising awareness about environmental injustice facing indigenous populations threatened by commercial overexploitation, the royal tour quickly devolved into a PR catastrophe when locals accused Meghan and Harry's entourage of looting precious botanical samples containing possible pharmaceutical properties. At first, when the gringos showed up with their cameras and security goons, "We naively opened our ancestral gardens sharing centuries-old herbal remedies developed sustainably through spiritual traditions untouched by Western contamination," said Yanomami tribal chieftain Davi Copenawa Yanomami, whose protected Venezuelan village borders the remote Colombian ecotourism site visited by the Sussexes late last year. "But we watched horrified as Meghan Markle and her squad began outright plundering extremely delicate medicinal samples, uprooting entire species we consider priceless pieces of cultural heritage passed down orally over dozens of generations." According to Copenawa and numerous other village elders registering official grievances, the Duchess spent extensive time in rainforest encampments meticulously gathering various foliage specimens while supervised by corporate researchers claiming they intended developing biomedical resources combating everything from cancer to neurological diseases. But rather than provide adequate compensation or royalty agreements ensuring fair indigenous profit participation, Meghan allegedly leveraged her Duchess leverage, illegally smuggling the valuable flora extracts out of protected territory back to Archwell's California headquarters. One night her squad kept harvesting rare roots and fungi samples despite us communicating their spiritual sanctity and ecological fragility, with Meghan claiming partial Cherokee Native American genealogy, absurdly entitled her plucking our ancestors' legacy for some Hollywood intellectual property racket, said Copenawa in an exclusive interview with indigenous rights blog Terra Nullius. Her arrogant colonial mercenaries threatened violence, detaining any community members intervening, while she perpetuated vicious lies telling my people providing foreign distractions easing poverty constituted environmental progressivism. Disturbingly, this wasn't the first time accusations surfaced implicating Archwell Productions engaging in similarly extractive dealings involving indigenous groups throughout Latin America and developing nations across the global south. Just last year in Peru, non-profit advocacy organizations accused Prince Harry's green tech startup Ecodyne of perpetuating modern neo-colonial biopiracy, looting valuable traditional botanical knowledge from remote Amazon communities, essentially patenting ideas and resources historically developed by native populations struggling for centuries preserving precious ecological heritage. On that particular project helping launch Ecodyne, Meghan played an active role introducing her husband's investors to lucrative indigenous contacts during her previous philanthropic endeavors despite repeated protests from tribe councils alleging unauthorized bioprospecting from protected reservations around Cusco. The Sussexes' former PR advisors defended those business deals as mutually consented arrangements between willing corporate partners compensating local participants fairly. However, Peruvian government regulators ultimately fined the company nearly $1 million following an investigation ruling the startup grossly violated federally mandated environmental and indigenous consultation protocols. "We welcomed the charming princess and her team, initially thinking they possessed sincere intentions beyond another meaningless photo opportunity just capitalizing off indigenous oppression," said Elder Lena Lucia Moschau from the Queros community based near the archaeological Incan sanctuary at Machu Picchu. But then they tried manipulating our naivete, misappropriating medicinal formulas and spiritual healing rituals as progressive eco-capitalism, extracting profit under corporate pretenses, concealing intellectual property theft from tribal legacies. With accusations of indigenous knowledge exploitation snowballing against the Sussexes accumulating seemingly everywhere their self-promotional tour stopped, populist firebrand Marquez clearly felt emboldened, finally delivering the deathblow, completely severing whatever remained of their credibility throughout regional indigenous rights spheres. The former child housekeeper who rose to political prominence advocating on behalf of marginalized Afro-Colombian populations affected by systemic oppression and environmental racism pulled zero punches, characterizing Meghan and Harry's misconduct. These two entitled celebrities arrived as colonial vultures, picking through our communities like carrion, appropriating the spiritual traditions and botanical resources we've guarded as sacred generational treasures, continued the Colombia vice president during a televised report highlighting accusations surrounding Archie's Amazon expedition. Did they secure proper prior consent from indigenous leadership councils? Did they broker equitable compensation packages? Did Meghan Markle explain to villagers how she'd patent inherited plant-based cures and medicinal customs, wresting ancestral birthright away? Marquez's stinging indictment bluntly portrayed the Sussexes as scheming scammers, flagrantly disregarding regional sovereignty, acting duplicitously under the humanitarian pretext of empowering local Amazon populations, before ultimately betraying them by looting irreplaceable environmental assets that should have remained communal property. Moreover, the vice president ridiculed Meghan and Harry's performative solidarity posturing alongside historically marginalized peoples globally when their profit models perpetuated the same rapacious resource extraction, pillaging nations across the developing world for generations. Let these progressive grifters lecturing us about racism and reparations remember that colonialism itself